you doing?
So, contrary to popular belief, I am not dead, but Gossip Girl is.
Gossip Girl's dead. No, let me say it. Yeah. Gossip Girl's dead. Yeah. Gossip Girl's dead.
Good job.
Not quite, actually. A reboot is in the works. One which I am increasingly optimistic about, believe it or not. The information we have thus far paints a pretty picture that I would really appreciate being accurate. I mean, we've been promised representation, Tom is still Hardy, Gossip Girl not existing as a website, but as an idea that we're all purveyors of our own social media surveillance state. Sign me up. Maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment, but it's not like I have anything better to do, aside from make YouTube videos, and clearly I haven't been doing that. Anyway, with that on the horizon and all of this societally imposed free time, I figured now was as good a time as any to revisit the original series. For the 5th time. Yes, I am well aware that's 5 too many times to have binged the entirety of Gossip Girl, but you must know by now good taste evades me. I didn't watch GG for the first time while it was airing because I was 8, preoccupied listening to Avril Lavigne on my iPod Nano. It was middle school when I stumbled upon it on Netflix at the perfect age to be corrupted by teenage debauchery and Chase Crawford's beautiful face. Boy was I, and ever since I get this uncontrollable urge to rewatch it whenever I'm reminded of its existence. Like in high school, I had to take one of those robotic babies home for the weekend, which for some ungodly reason reminded me of that time Georgina was impregnated by a married Russian whose wife then wanted her dead, so she convinced Dan that he was the father. Naturally, I had to pull a couple all-nighters to relive that experience. Then during my brief stint in college, I was making a Spotify playlist out of my old Pandora likes when I happened upon the song With Me by Sum 41. And next thing I knew, the credits were rolling on the finale of Gossip Girl. Of course, I can't blame myself for that one. It was Alexandra Patsavos who did me like that. The best music coordinator to grace this earth. I want you to know everything. That's the genuine show edit, by the way. Most recently, 'twas a meme that reignited my Gossip Girl obsession. A funny one that would have survived longer if brands could help themselves. They cannot, so you get it. I have the Gossip Girl curse. My fairy godmother bestowed upon me the gift of endless entertainment derived from teen melodrama. It's interesting though to bear witness to the way my perception of the show changes as I grow up. Like 12-year-old Julia didn't catch any of many references. She did not bat an eye at the dangerous and unethical behaviors the show glamorized. She was an avid Chuck lover and chair shipper despite many red flags that 21-year-old Julia has to actively pretend aren't canon to enjoy watching at all. I'm putting on my shades to cover up my eyes. The fact of the matter is, as long as I continue rewatching this series, a wee bit older and wiser each time, I'll eventually be forced to confront the possibility that Gossip Girl might not be the most awesome show ever. In fact, it might be bad. Iconic, entertaining, the blueprint, but bloated, repetitive, and problematic. Upon my most recent viewing, I got a little over halfway through when I thought to myself, hold the phone. Am I even enjoying myself right now? And I wasn't, because it was season 4 and I was dealing with Ava and Juliet, which meant I would soon be dealing with Ivy Dickens, which did not sound appealing. All this got me thinking that one of those guys who makes the day whichever show died videos should tackle Gossip Girl. Didn't take me long to realize that idea was absurd and they would literally never do that because the only people who take Gossip Girl seriously are me and the type of people who subscribe to me. So if I wanted this video in the universe, I was going to have to put it out there. Plus, I asked y'all what you wanted from me, and one of the top replies was anything about Gossip Girl, so who am I to look Destiny in the eye and refuse her? Let's talk about Gossip Girl. Firstly, a rundown for the uninitiated.
Hey Upper East Siders, Gossip Girl here, and I have the biggest news ever.
Gossip Girl was based on a book series that I know literally nothing about, so who cares? All I know is it's a loose adaptation, mostly borrowing the characters in name and personality, but completely mixing up all of the plot lines and whatnot. The show was developed by Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, straight off of the OC. I I guess it was never all that much of a success as far as ratings go, but it was culturally relevant and influential. It's been called, and not just by me, the best teen drama of all time, indulging in the tropes established by its predecessors, but pushing the envelope so far that its scandalous portrayal of teenagers, which are relied on for advertising, became commonplace. For better or worse. It was and still is widely considered a guilty pleasure, which is a term I'm not so fond of because it's rarely, if ever, used to describe media with a male target demographic, but it is Gossip Girl, so I'll allow it. The show's concept is that an anonymous blogger catalogs the lives of New York's trust fund babies, or as she dubs them, Manhattan's elite.
Gossip Girl here, your one and only source into the scandalous lives of Manhattan's elite.
Relatable protagonists, I know, except Gossip Girl rarely pretends to be relatable or approachable. It's all socially acceptable underage drinking and high fashion outfits worn to the least and most mundane of places. You can't watch it with the same mindset you'd watch One Tree Hill or Gilmore Girls. It's a borderline soap opera and meant to be enjoyed as such. The characters don't behave sensibly, they behave outrageously, and secrets aren't revealed naturally in private. They're blasted on Gossip Girl, ensuring the social destruction of whomever the subject. And that's all Gossip Girl, the website, is for the majority of the series. A plot device. She knows an ambiguous number of secrets and reveals them at dramatic effect's convenience. Sometimes it's clear who sent them in, and other times that question goes completely unanswered. I mean, who was it who knew Blair and Jack slept together on New Year's Eve? We'll never be told. Gossip Girl gets to know whatever the writers need her to know, and the capabilities of the website get to fluctuate at the plot's convenience as well. She's not a threatening presence or methodical, constant mystery like A in Pretty Little Liars. She's more like Tracy in How I Met Your Mother. The whole show is about her, and one day she'll be revealed, but for now we'll just be occasionally reminded that she does in fact exist. They fiddle with the mystery of Gossip Girl's identity in one episode of season 2 and occasionally throughout the last 2 seasons, but usually that question is delegated to the intro whispering, "And who am I?" That's one secret I'll never tell.
You know you love me. XOXO.
Her narration opens and closes every episode, as well as she pops in occasionally to dish out the hot goss, but besides that, episodes are mainly centered around events. An episode of Gossip Girl is either going to lead up to or deal with the fallout of some secret teenage rager or high society party. And that's what the show is. Rich teenagers turned young adults being rich and engaging in tomfoolery. You'd think, this being the case, that it'd be nearly impossible to root for any of the characters. And that might be true for the more reasonable of us, but I love them. Not all of them. I love Blair Waldorf and Nate Archibald, Chuck Bass post season 1, and Serena Woodsen pre-season 3. We'll get to Dan. Let's break it down, shall we? Serena Woodsen is charismatic, blonde, and rich. Most things come easy to her, and she resents the accusation. At the beginning of the series, she's returning to New York after having hightailed it to boarding school, which we later find out she did because she slept with her best friend's boyfriend, as well as witnessed a cocaine overdose, which she fled the scene of. It's a wholesome show. Here she is, reformed, trying to distance herself from her bad girl past by dating nice guy Dan Humphrey. And for the first 2 seasons, you'll buy it. I did, at least. Occasionally, her past catches up with her and she's forced to grapple with it, but she does undoubtedly behave more maturely than her peers, and every other character goes on and on about how different she is, so she must be. Then in season 2, she gets involved with Armie Hammer, who scams everyone she knows out of a bunch of money, and it's all downhill from there. The rest of Serena's time on Gossip Girl is spent canoodling with men she should not canoodle with, and having a generally messy life in general. On paper, nothing she does is more egregious than what other characters do, but she maintains this attitude of innocence that makes her less sufferable, in my opinion. Nothing bad that happens is Serena's fault, even when it is. It would be one thing if her arc was one of character regression, but as far as I can tell, we're always meant to be rooting for her. She's framed the same way throughout the entire series that she is in the first season, even when her behavior fluctuates wildly. She keeps making the same mistakes representative of her old self, who I've come to think is just her permanent self, because it's not your past if it keeps happening. Still, I never totally hate her, and she should have ended up with Nate. Nathaniel Archibald is too good for this show. He does not belong here with these people. He makes mistakes, but never as substantial of mistakes as his peers, which is maybe why his relevance dwindles as the seasons go on. In the early seasons, Nate has some pretty compelling plot lines dealing with his family. First, that his dad is a drug addict found guilty of embezzlement, losing his family their reputation and money. Then that his mom's side of the family is composed of corrupt politicians who are trying to bring him into the fold. Past that, Nate's just a pretty face kissing every series regular female more than once each, as well as a myriad of other side characters too old and too young for him. Anyway, Nate's best friend is Chuck Bass.
I'm Chuck Bass. I'm Chuck Bass. I'm Chuck Bass.
I'm Chuck Bass!
I'm Chuck Bass. I'm Chuck Bass. I'm Chuck Bass. I'm Chuck Bass.
He's Chuck Bass.
So, there's no easy way to say this, but Chuck is quite literally an attempted rapist. The attempts, plural, take place during the pilot episode, which is why I find I'm able to erase them from my interpretation. Like, maybe early on, before they were even picked up, they hadn't realized that he would be given a redemption arc, so they made him irredeemably evil. In the same episode, he also refers to his alive mom, who is later referenced as being dead.
Well, then maybe I should swipe some of my dad's Viagra. Or my mom's Paxil?
She's not actually dead, but at the time he believes she is dead, so clearly they didn't have his whole thing figured out yet. The thing is, I don't think I could even enjoy watching this show again at the age I am now if I didn't retcon this tidbit from my memory, because I can't imagine watching Gossip Girl and not rooting for Chuck and not liking Chuck and not shipping Cher. Not because it's unfathomable that somebody wouldn't, in fact there are plenty of reasons why you shouldn't, but because so much of the show is focused on their on and off relationship. If you don't like them, what do you like about Gossip Girl? How can you stand it? I mean, I hate Dan and Blair, and for that reason alone, I usually skip the middle bit of season 5 when they're together. How much do you have to skip if you don't like Cher? Anyway, if you, like me, cherry-pick Chuck's narrative so that he is a douchebag redeemed as opposed to an attempted rapist redeemed, then he's one of the best characters on the show. Additionally, one of only 3 who I would say experience any major personality change. It's simple, but it's something. Bad hair, bad guy, good guy, daddy issues, dead dad, alive dad, no dog without Blair with Blair. Blair Waldorf is an icon and the best thing about Gossip Girl, period. Sure, if we judge these characters on morality, she's maybe second to last after Chuck, but we don't. Blair might be a generally bad person who mellows out a little throughout the series, however, mostly remains a scheming mean girl, but she owns it. She pulls no punches. Not to mention, I think that she experiences more karma than the other characters. She does wrong, but she gets wronged. Blair gets her comeuppance. Whether in the form of a rescinded acceptance to Yale, a dowry to be paid, a deal with God keeping her from the guy she loves, or just disappointment expressed by the people she cares about, Blair's forced to deal with her wrongdoings in a way I don't think any of the other characters are. Like Nate, Blair is at some point or another romantically involved with every opposite sex series regular. It's less obvious with her, I think, except for when they force her and Dan together like repelling magnets. I actually think that there's a world where this pairing could have worked for me. I'm a fan of enemies to lovers just like the rest of us. Like maybe if they'd introduced the idea before the latter half of the series, and maybe if they had dedicated a whole season to them getting together rather than shoving it between her divorce and her commitment to Chuck. Anyway, before I get carried away and before we get to Dan, I should probably mention Jenny Humphrey and Vanessa Abram, who unceremoniously vanished from the show after season 4. Jenny, I think, is overhated and has one of the more compelling arcs on the show. I spent a lot of time pretending to hate her just because everybody else did, but honestly, middle school me loved nothing more than her raccoon eyeliner and, in hindsight, ugly clothesline. Though I can admit, she is kind of annoying. I think that's mostly due to Taylor Momsen's performance, which is squeaky is the word I can come up with for it. Don't get me wrong, I love our gothic queen, but I support her decision to quit acting. Vanessa is a character I really wish that I could like, but she is so continuously forced into the show that it's hard to. Like, there's legitimately no reason for her to be there at any given moment. Her tickets into the narrative are her friendship with Dan and eventual relationship with Nate, but make no mistake, these plot lines are about Dan and Nate. Vanessa is there, but the show isn't interested in engaging with her character beyond the way she affects their lives. Think about how long it was until we were introduced to anyone from Vanessa's family. Think about how we never have a set for her house and never experience her life outside of any other characters. It's not her fault that she's nobody's favorite character. It's the writers and Dan's. But alas, she's still nobody's favorite character. Then there are parental units who play major roles in the show, mainly Rufus and Lily, who are Dan and Serena's parents, who are so clearly meant for each other and should be together, but are pretty much destined to break up in service of the unearned Dan and Serena endgame. Fine, we can talk about Dan now. What sucks about Dan Humphrey is that I actually kind of like the regression of his character. I kind of like that he starts out a judgy, holier-than-thou good boy who eventually engages in all of the same behaviors he once criticized. I kind of love his insider storyline when he publishes a fictional biography detailing his opinions on everyone he knows, especially because it juxtaposes in season 2 when he wrote an article about Chuck but then refused to publish it out of respect for him. By the way, if you pause on that article, it is hilariously blunt. This caused Charlie to believe his father held him responsible for his mother's death. If it weren't for Charlie, Bernie's beloved wife would still be alive. It was Charlie who killed her, Bernie must have thought. And that was why Bernie could never truly love Charlie. Honestly, had it been set up properly, I probably would have been okay with Dan being Gossip Girl. Dan's Gossip Girl, by the way. The problem is, despite his descent into douchebaggery being surprisingly natural and easy, the writers don't seem to realize what they've accomplished. Instead, we get to the final episode and he's forced into this happy ending he doesn't deserve and nobody wants to see him have. He lets this group of people he's essentially stalked and psychologically tortured for years in on his secret, and it takes them all of 2 seconds to get over it? Excuse me? It's especially egregious when it comes to Serena, who he ends up marrying despite all of this. And I haven't even mentioned the plot holes. Oh, the plot holes. Not nitpicky, haha, look what I found plot holes, but like mind-blowing, how did the writers think they could get away with this plot holes? Not only does Dan frequently react to Gossip Girl blasts alone, he sends them alone. There's a scene in season 4 when he emails Gossip Girl with Blair over his shoulder and somehow sends himself a reply without her noticing. He releases one too many blasts that actively work against his own interest for me to believe that he's really that into his no press is bad press attitude. Like you expect me to believe that he blew up his own flirtation with Rachel? No. They attempt to sell us this reality in the finale that just is clearly not possible. Don't even get me started on the assertion that Jenny knew all along. She did not.
At PG-13, someone could have ended up in jail, like her brother.
Is that true?
What? You were in jail?
And as for Blair Waldorf,
The worst thing is that it's hard to even tell if the writers intended for Gossip Girl to be Dan all along or not. And I don't know which is worse, that they knew and deliberately created plot holes for the sake of surprise, or that they decided at the end and then threw together some lazy excuse for it to be a main character. I mean, they do a small, minuscule amount of foreshadowing.
Whoa, wait. Dan is Gossip Girl?
Gossip Girl, you crazy?
Then what are you doing here?
I looped you.
Shortly after the finale of Gossip Girl, Stephanie Savage did an interview in which she claims that they never entertained any other ideas of who Gossip Girl was. She says that if people are really curious about the absurdity of it all, they should go back and rewatch the season to get their brains going. Well, I'll tell you what, Stephanie, I've rewatched each season 5 times, and my brain is going. It doesn't add up. Penn Badgley agrees, though very politely. You might think that we can take her word for it and that my confusion is unnecessary, but Joshua Saffron did an interview 3 years ago that negates her. He claims that they worked hard to lay tiny seeds about it being Eric until the New York Post predicted that and they scrapped it. Bad idea to reimagine your story based on what people online are predicting, by the way. As far as he knew when he left the show, they were planning on Gossip Girl being Nate. At least we dodged one bullet. But for real, what's the truth? I guess I'll never know, but I'll resent it either way. Both lying to your audience and switching up major plot points to maintain mystery are flawed systems of television writing, I would say. Anyway, you might think, based on how much I dislike Dan being Gossip Girl and huge chunks of seasons 4 and 5, that I wish they would have quit after season 1 or 2 or 3. And while I do think that the show's decline in quality is really painfully obvious during the later seasons, wishing that it would have ended sooner is complicated by the fact that I love season 6. Parts of it, at least. Obviously, I don't love the Gossip Girl reveal. I don't love to see Nate date a high schooler. No siree. But I love Chuck and Blair's Bonnie and Clyde impression. And I love watching Dan just totally mess everything up. And I love that Serena starts the season running away with some old guy with a new identity. It's melodramatic in all of the best ways, and it's my second favorite season after the first. I especially love the finale reveal aside. I love Cher's shotgun wedding, and I love all of the characters showing up again, and I love all the music they play in it, and I just love it. If I attempt to think about the show as objectively as possible, though that is impossible, but you know what I mean, then I guess I would probably say the first season is the only one critically defendable. But that doesn't matter to me. I would not trade my 121 hours of indulgent teen melodrama for the world. Perhaps I'll be back to tell you what I think of the reboot, if they're ever able to make that happen, considering Hollywood is canceled at the moment. Hopefully you'll see me before another 4 months again.